Stop losing easy marks on this topic. In this video, I'll be showing you how to write a response if you're asked to explain how a reflex arc works. So grab your book and grab your pen and stay with me. The first point you need to write down is that a stimulus is detected by a receptor. Students, you must use the key scientific terms when you are writing a response. So let's identify the receptor and the stimulus. So the receptor is right here, and that is the skin. Remember, the receptors are found in the sense organs, and the skin is an example of a sense organ. The stimulus would be the flame right there, and so the stimulus would either be pain or heat. So once the stimulus is detected by the receptors, an electrical impulse will be generated in the first neuron of the arc, and this neuron is called the sensory neuron, and it is represented by this red line coming away from the receptor. Where is this impulse going? It is going to the spinal cord. And remember, the spinal cord makes up the CNS along with the brain. Students, how do you know which diagram represents the spinal cord? Just look for the butterfly shape. In the CNS, the impulse passes to the relay neuron, and you can see it represented by that small neuron within the spinal cord. Students, do you notice that the neurons are not touching, but the impulse needs to move from one neuron to another? So the big question is, how does the impulse move from one neuron to another without touching? Let us read. It says between neurons is a synapse. So they're talking about this gap right here. This is what we call the synapse. Neurotransmitters diffuse across to generate a new impulse. These little pink dots represent the neurotransmitter substances. All right, so let's break this down using the diagram. So say, for example, this is the sensory neuron. The impulse is moving along the sensory neuron when it gets to the end of the sensory neuron. In order for this impulse to move to the next neuron, which is the relay neuron, what's going to happen? Neurotransmitter chemicals will diffuse from the sensory neuron into the synapse and move across to the relay neuron. And that's how an impulse is generated in the next neuron. The impulse travels along the motor neuron. So from the relay neuron, the impulse will travel along the motor neuron, and that's the last neuron in the arc. The motor neuron is linked to the effector. And remember now, students, the effector can either be a muscle or a gland. The effector produces a response. So let's look at the response to this stimulus. Remember, the stimulus was heat or pain. How will the body respond to that? So one, the muscle will contract and the arm will be pulled away. Let us now summarize the entire reflex arc using this diagram only. So first thing, the receptor, which is found in the skin, detects the stimulus, and in this case, it's going to be pain or heat. An impulse will be generated in the first neuron in the arc, that is called the sensory neuron, and it's going to pass on the impulse to the CNS. Within the CNS, which is the spinal cord, you'll find the relay neuron, right? An impulse will be generated in the relay neuron. Remember, students, that there is a gap between the sensory and the relay neuron that is called the synapse. In order for the impulse to move from the sensory neuron to the relay neuron, neurotransmitter chemicals or substances will diffuse across and bind to the relay neuron and generate the impulse in the relay neuron. Right? The impulse will then be passed on to the last neuron in the arc, which is called the motor neuron. The motor neuron is linked to the effector, and in this case, the effector is the muscle. And what will happen? The muscle will contract and the arm will be pulled away. The questions linked to this topic is usually about 4 to 6 marks, so you can use this content to help you to answer any questions on Reflex Arc. Let me share with you now a model answer that you can either screenshot or write in your books, your revision book, and you can use it to help you to answer questions about the Reflex Arc. So here is the model answer, screenshot it or write it down in your revision books and use it to help you to answer questions. Students, please note that I am now on TikTok. You can find me at Miss B Biology for revision slides. They are concise and easy to go through. Thank you so much for watching and all the best in your exams. Bye bye.